Right now, welcoming, I think his first visit here to the Fortress of Attitude is a local musician, and I'm going to call him a Skinnerd file. That's Brandon Miller over there at mic number 2. How are you, man? Good to see you.
Great, buddy. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. Now, I say Skinnerd file because you are about I won't say maybe the biggest expert I know on Leonard Skinnerd, but you're right up there in the top of the heap.
I appreciate that. It's been a lot of work.
Now, first of all, Brandon and I go back a few years, about a decade or so ago. We did I remember the show called The X Factor.
Oh yeah,
It was on Fox, I believe.
Yeah.
And Brandon auditioned for that. We did a local open call, more or less, here in the Hattiesburg area, and was held at the Forest County Multipurpose Center. And Brandon won the thing. And
well
got to go on to the, I guess, what do you call it, kind of a regional thing, a statewide kind of deal?
Yeah, they flew
was that in Meridian?
No, they flew me up to Greensboro, South Carolina.
Okay, all right.
That's where I think it was.
Yeah, so, and you made it you came one step away from actually making it on the show.
I made it all 2 rounds, and I made it to the 3rd round of actually getting in front of the producers, and then they wound up choosing another individual over me. So it wasn't meant to be, but
yeah.
It was a great experience.
You did better than I would have done.
Now, we say Leonard Skinnerd and all that, and of course that's been in the news here recently with the passing of Gary Rossington, the final original member who was left of the band. And you have some ties, kind of 6 degrees of separation,
right.
But you were at the funeral. You were personally invited to go to Gary Rossington's funeral in Jacksonville.
Yes.
And you just literally got back last night.
Well, yes. I'm dragging.
So very quickly, how your tie to Skinnerd is through
Artemis Pyle. I got on tour with Artemis Pyle back in October of last year to go open up for 38 Special. Both their guitarists got sick at the same time, and my co-producer for my album that's coming out in April, Dave Fowler, who's played for everybody under the sun out of Nashville, plays for Artemis full time, and he called me up and said, "Hey, this is an emergency. We're going on tour with 38. We need a guitar player. I know you know all the Alan Collins parts. Can you come on tour?" And I was like, "Say when I'm there." Like that was the biggest opportunity I've ever been given.
You can't pass that up.
Right, and it opened up a lot of doors. The good Lord's been good to me, so I really cannot complain.
So, and you shared some of the stories with Artemis on your Facebook page and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
I mean, you talk about literally. There's living history right there.
Yes.
And he actually has I'll use air quotes movie that is either out or just about to come out.
It's out.
It's about the plane crash, and it's about from his perspective.
Sure.
And he's very vocal about saying that. Well, just because I say it happened this way doesn't mean that the other guys are wrong. It's like if you looked at it, you were standing on a corner and you saw a car accident. And you've got 10 witnesses, you might have 8 different accounts of the very same car wreck.
Yes.
None of them is completely right. Maybe none of them is completely wrong. And this is his telling of that night down in Gillsburg.
Well, his perspective has to be more valuable than most. Let's put it that way.
Well, unless you were on the plane, it really is,
Yeah.
right? And there's very few people that were on the plane who are still with us today.
Yeah.
Gene Odom is one who we've met and is another piece of living history.
Craig Reed, who I was with down there in Jacksonville, Craig Reed and his son Chad Reed, they've been really good to me, opened up a lot of doors for me and my band. And I mean, there's still a handful of survivors from that crash that are still with us. Leslie Hawkins, one of the backup singers, is still with us.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Gary just passed, so he was the last founding member of Skinnerd.
Yeah.
But as far as actually playing in the band, the only one left is Artemis, and then Miss Leslie was a backup singer.
Can I ask you this is going to be one of those questions, and the 3 of us in the studio, I think, are in agreement, Brian, John, myself, to a certain extent. But now that Gary is gone, is Leonard Skinnerd still really Leonard Skinnerd?
Controversial question.
And it's no disrespect to any of the current members of the band.
Well, it's one of those things. I mean, everyone's got their opinion. I know Ronnie and Alan and Gary and Steve and Ed, Bob, Leon, everybody that was in the band. I know they want the music to keep going. Everyone's got their opinion. Johnny, took up the reins for Ronnie after he passed in '87 for the tribute tour. Ricky Medlock played drums for him in '71, '72 in the very, very early days for a little while. Everyone's got their opinion. I have mine, but at the end of the day, they're going to do what they're going to do.
That's true.
Regardless,
It doesn't matter what we say.
it doesn't.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm glad to see the music going. But it's one of those things to where it is what it is, whether we like it or not. So what they choose to do, I really don't know. But Ricky and Johnny were very nice to me at Gary's funeral. Everybody there was, as nice as they could be considering the circumstances. So I was really impressed, with how they were, because some of them knew me, some of them didn't, but everybody was very gracious. So I have no complaints as far as that goes.
I was wondering, as not to distract from the reason for being there, but how star-studded was that funeral?
Oh, well, I'll put it like this. I'm sitting there waiting in line, to see Gary, and it was heartbreaking to see him in that condition, but
Yeah.
at least I was honored to be able to pay my respects. But when I turn around, there's Paul Rogers of
Bad
Free and Bad
Company,
Company,
yeah.
and he sang
Man.
for Queen. I mean, I turned around, that was probably one of the only points in my life I was actually speechless, standing there next to Paul Rogers. And he was the sweetest guy in the world, and I didn't realize how short he was.
Realize you're probably a little taller.
I'm
than-
6'4",
Yeah,
and he's like he's like
So,
5'7",
yeah,
but
yeah.
but such a massive voice.
Yeah,
No
such a-
kidding.
right.
Such a guy.
So, how did the invite to the funeral come? Because it was family and friends.
I was fortunate enough. Me and my guitarist Zach Lane, who is a social media sensation on guitar right now. He's been called Little Gary because he looks just like Gary back in '72 or '73. It's insane. Anyway, we got invited through Chad Reed and Craig Reed, who was the roadie for Skinner from '73 to 2010, I think it was.
Okay.
So that's how that happened.
All right. And you actually got to perform, not obviously at the funeral, but in the celebration of life afterwards. Talk a little bit about that, because that's pretty cool. It's a cool story.
Yeah, that we got invited to Whitey's Fish Camp, which is where Skinner kind of cut their teeth back in the '70s. From what I was told, they were kind of like a house band. They played there a lot back then in the early days, and they had the celebration of life there. And when we got there, there was already a band up there jamming. And then when we got up to play, we played four or five Skinner tunes. And then the Kurt Townsend band showed up, who played with 38 Special. And then I think one or two guys from 38 may have showed up. I'm not 100% sure. And I think one guy from Molly Hatchet showed up, but I'm not 100% sure. That's just what I've heard. But a lot of the local legends from Jacksonville showed up and got up there and
It ended up being like a jam session.
It
right?
did.
Yeah.
It did. We were on stage with all the Jacksonville legends that played with the Skinner guys back in the day at some point or another.
That's wild.
Had to be fun.
It was amazing.
And you quite literally left yesterday and drove straight back through from Jacksonville.
Yes. Went to bed and here I am.
I don't know. We're not live streaming this, but we will put this video up on social media. But you've got an axe that you have sitting over there to your immediate left here in the studio.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that guitar that you brought in, because you actually make guitars, which I think is fascinating. That's a whole nother story. You could take a whole nother hour and talk a little bit about that. But we don't have time. But talk a little bit about that axe there.
This is the only one in the world. Tom Murphy from Murphy's Lab at Gibson Custom Shop in Nashville actually signed off on it. I got the video on my Facebook page and everything. But this is the only one that is an exact replica, duplicate of Alan Collins of Leonard Skinner, who wrote and performed Freebird, of his 1964 Gibson Firebird 3. Highly modified.
But it's modified to Alan's
specs.
Yeah.
Alan highly modified it for back then. He was pretty much like an early Eddie Van Halen in a way. He always swapped parts and almost like swapping engines and transmissions in different vehicles almost. But but this guitar is highly modified. It took me 3 years to do this.
And it is playable.
Yes, I played it last night with all the legends. and I thought I almost broke the whammy bar off of it last night at Freebird. It was a lot of fun playing with those guys. It was also intimidating because these guys are You know, they play with 38 and
Oh, I can't even imagine.
all the Southern rock guys. I mean, these guys are local legends, and being on stage with them was an honor.
There's just so much talent in that room.
Oh my
you know?
God,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
unbelievable.
Now, Brandon's going to stick around for the hour, but before we go to break here, I did want to ask you about two things. First of all, you were in the process, I don't know whether it's completed yet or not, but you recreated Freebird. And everyone goes, well, hell, anybody that plays Southern Rock does Freebird. You actually went back in and have recreated it note for note. What version are you? Because there's a number of versions of
Right.
Freebird.
You got the studio cut from '73 off of the Pronounced album, but the one that we redone for the 50th anniversary in tribute to Gary and the band was the Live at the Fox 1976 off of the One More from the Road album, which is their live album they recorded at the Fox Theater in Atlanta, Georgia. And we created that version, note for note, start to finish, live crowd, everything. I done Alan's guitar parts. I done Ronnie's vocals. My guitarist Zach Lane played Gary's slide parts on a '61 Rosington SG. I played the solo on Alan's Firebird. We used the exact amplifiers they did, the 1975 PV Mace amps. Dave Fowler from Artemis Pyle played bass on it. And then our producer was Kent Wells, who was Dolly Parton's producer, long time producer. But we recreated that live performance, note for note, start to finish, and we were fortunate enough to even have Jack Gavin from the Charlie Daniels Band play drums, play Artemis Pyle's drum parts. And it took us a long time to do it, but I really think it's going to shock everybody when they hear it. Just how
When does it come out?
It comes out April 3rd,
Which is the anniversary.
the anniversary.
50th anniversary,
50th anniversary
of Freebird.
They recorded Freebird April 3rd, 1973 in Doraville, Georgia at Studio One.
Okay.
So that's it just happened to line up. The stars aligned on that one. That was not intentional.
No kidding.
And is this going to be a download, a purchase? I mean, how does when April 3rd rolls around, how does someone get a hold of this if they want to hear it?
Yeah, you'll be able to look up my band Slickson Revolver, Slickson Revolver, and you'll be able to look us up. We will drop Freebird and one of my originals called Crossroads.
Okay.
My album's completely originals except for 2 songs, 5 originals, 2 covers. And I'm dropping Freebird and Crossroads at the same time. They're both singles. You'll be able to find them on all streaming platforms and download platforms, Apple Music, Amazon Music,
Sure.
all that stuff.
And before we go to break, I did want to ask this as well, while we're talking Skinnerd. You're also tied in a little bit with the monument that's in Gillsburg.
Yes.
Tell us about the project that you are undertaking, that you've got the blessing of everybody involved.
Yes.
And this is kind of a cool thing as well. Just talk a little bit about that.
We are doing a mural of Ronnie Van Zant to put up over there at the crash site at the Leonard Skinner Memorial Site in Gillsburg, Mississippi. And it's going to be identical to the stones that are already there. They're massive. They're like 8
Yes,
feet
they are.
tall.
Yes, they're
Yep.
big. They're
They're like
huge.
8 feet tall and like 6 feet wide. They're huge. And it's going to be a big picture of Ronnie on the front, very detailed. I mean, it's incredible how it's going to look. I will have those up very soon. We're currently getting contracts established and stuff like that. And on the back is going to be a poem that was wrote about Ronnie. So that way, when people come that may not know who Ronnie looked like or whatever, they'll be able to see what he looked like on stage, and who he was as a person. We're going to have that set there. That the monument reveal will be on October 20th of this year, October 20th.
The anniversary of the crash.
So, and anybody that donates $100 or more will be able to get a chance to get a ticket to win the Alan Collins 1958 Gibson Explorer that I have built, and it was my contribution. I bought the guitar, I paid for it. I built everything on it. So that's just as a thank you for contributing to the cost of the monument.
So
they're not cheap.
there is a raffle, but it's also going toward a cause. 100% of it's going to
Yes,
to build.
there is a raffle for the guitar,
this
but
monument thing.
a lot of people confuse it. Like the money is not for the guitar; it's for the monument.
Right.
So
You've donated the guitar, as you
Yes.
say, as a thank you for donations.
Yes,
All right.
exactly.
Very good. He's Brandon Miller with Slickson Revolver. Where did the name come from?
that was my that was my stage name years ago.
Okay.
And it just kind of stuck with me. And when I decided to start writing my own music and doing my own record. I'm like, what am I going to use? I need something different. And it just so happened that it worked out. And everybody that's heard it, they're like, man, that's a cool name. It's different. I'm like, well, I guess it'll work out then.